Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where we recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, it's the 6th of October 2023. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So first up, we have an update on Dencun testing. So as you guys know, Devnet 9 for Dencun is basically up and running now. It's been running for, I think, about a week or probably more than that. And this update comes from Marek, who is the team lead at Nethermind. So he said here, our spamming blob tool showed issues on Devnet 8. We ran it again on Devnet 9 and encountered issues in various client pairs, including a few broken nodes and missing slots from many clients. There are more things happening with fuzzing testing and MEV boost testing and all that, and they found bugs in the Nethermind implementation, but have been fixing those bugs and continuing testing here. So this is basically what testing is all about, right, guys? Finding these bugs, finding these issues, ironing them out, obviously before anything gets to mainnet or even like the public test nets, because as I said, this is a devnet, this is not the public test net yet, and yeah, this is just a great little update here from Marek. Now, of course, someone asked in the comments, are we still a go for 2023 for Dencun or not? And Marek said, my best guess is early 2024. So yeah, definitely not going to be 2023 at this point in time, I think, especially because as far as I know, there has been no public test nets being scheduled for forks yet. As I said, like they're targeting early to mid-November for that, so it's definitely not going to happen in October, I don't think. But we'll have to kind of keep an eye on that and see what the timing is around that. But yeah, it'll be early 2024 now, which, as I've said plenty of times before, it doesn't really matter. I mean, the fees are so cheap on L2s right now. If you're worried about, or not worried about, if you're excited for 4844 to go live, like I am too, and for that to drop fees a little bit more on the L2s there. But the L2s right now, they're so cheap to use. I mean, you can actually look at the website l2fees.info. I'll bring it up on my screen here, just to see how cheap they are, right? Like you've got, let's look at the most popular ones. You've got Optimism, which is 6 cents to swap tokens, and you have Arbitrum 1, which is 9 cents to swap tokens, and all of them are under 15 cents basically to swap tokens here, except I guess like Loop Ring, but that might be a bug, and sending ETH is less than 5 cents. Now, some people will say, well, it's not as cheap as we can get it, and it's obviously not as cheap as we can get it, right? We're going to get it much cheaper than this, and it's also not going to be affected by when gas spikes when 4844 goes live. But I think, as I've said before, it kind of goes back to this discussion of like how fee sensitive are the users that we have right now, right? Because if you look at the fee sensitivity of users, I think that the difference between like 5 cents and 1 cent isn't that big of a difference, because if you're a user that doesn't have that much money to play around with, you're not going to be doing like multiple swaps per day, right? You're probably going to be doing a swap, maybe one swap a day, or a few swaps a week. Say you're using crypto as like payment rails, for example. So I think that it's kind of negligible, the difference there. Not to say that we shouldn't get fees lower than what they are, but you have to kind of realistically look at the current user base and the potential future user base and see where we land there. And at the end of the day, the future user base, where the ones that are like extremely fee sensitive, let's say they need things to be completely free and fees not to be not even to be something that they worry about. That's going to be into the future as well. But as it exists, the current user base and the near future user base that I think we're going to be onboarding, they're not going to be sensitive to fees like this. Like 5 cent, 1 cent, I think that's basically the same thing. Especially because you also have to look at like the expected value from a transaction that you're doing. So for example, I use this example a lot in the past. If you're claiming an airdrop, and let's say the airdrop is like $100, right? $100 worth of a token, you're claiming it, and it's costing you like even $5 or $10 in gas fees to claim it, you're going to spend that, right? You're probably going to spend up to like a certain amount, like whatever you feel like spending, but probably even more than $10, $15 on fees to claim that airdrop, considering that airdrop is free money, right? So at the end of the day, it really is about the expected value of the transaction and what you're willing to pay for it. And that goes back to, I think, everything in life, right? Like you buy things that so you pay for things the amount of money that you think is worth it, right? Sometimes you buy things out of FOMO. Sometimes you do it and you regret it later. But a lot of the purchases that we make are dictated by how much we want to spend on them. We look at something, we look at a product, and we're like, okay, well, I want to spend this much on this product because this is how much it's worth to me. The same is true for block space, because as I've said before, Ethereum and its layer 2s, they sell block space. That is their product, and it just depends how much it's worth it for you. If it's worth it for you to claim $100 airdrop, Because you claim the $100 airdrop, maybe it costs you $10 to claim, another $10 to swap it to ETH or USDC, and then send it to an exchange to cash out to fiat or something like that. Like, even if you spend $25 on fees, you're still netting out $75, right? You're still better off with $75. So it's all about the kind of expected value from this. And of course, that's like a very easy thing to work out because you can put a monetary value on it. Obviously, using the analogy of like, I guess, real world purchases is a bit harder. Like, for example, you go to the grocery store and you have to choose between two different brands of rice, and one's, half the price of the other one. You would, depending on what kind of like value you're getting out of that, or what you feel like doing, or what you feel like purchasing there, you either go for the cheap one or the more expensive one, but there's not, I guess, like a monetary thing there. Whereas with claiming an airdrop, for example, there is. Like, the actual monetary value, and it's a very easy calculation to do. But I think when it comes to other things, it becomes a little bit harder. But also within crypto, like, airdrop's just the most obvious example. There are plenty of other examples. For example, let's say you want to buy $100 of a token and it's going to cost you $10 to do that. Well, if you expect to make more than 10% of your money on that token, on speculating on that token, maybe more than that if you account for selling it back to ETH or USDC. So let's say more than 20%, because let's say it costs you $10 either way. If you expect to make more than that, then it makes sense for you to pay that. And it's the same with like centralized exchange fees, for example. I see people who are investors, not traders. Traders are more fee sensitive here, of course, but I see a lot of investors say, oh, I got charged a 1% fee here, but only 0.5% fee here. Does that really matter, like, in the grand scheme of things? Because if you think about it, right, if you're paying like a 1% fee, if you're buying ETH today, you're obviously expecting to make more than 1% back on your investment with ETH, right? Like, you're expecting to make a lot more than that. So again, it kind of comes down to what you're willing to pay, and obviously other things go into it as well. Like with centralized exchanges, it's not just the fees; it's also how trustworthy they are, whether you want to leave money on them or not, or have money on them at any given time, things like that, right? That also factors into it, but it's always funny to see people's different opinions on things, and kind of like how they value different things, depending on both from an investment perspective, but also from kind of a discretionary spending perspective, where, buying your groceries is not an investment, right? Maybe you could say it's an investment in yourself. Like, you buy groceries and cook dinner at home instead of eating out because it's healthier, right? I guess like that is a different form of investment, but it's not a monetary investment, right? And you can go down this rabbit hole in any different number of ways you want to about value. I think that the term value and like the concept of value to humans is incredibly interesting, to be honest. And I could keep going on about this forever, but I'm not going to. But this is generally how I think about it when it comes to fees generally, right? People will pay what they are willing to pay based on the expected value and expected outcome here. But that's not an argument not to lower fees. Definitely not, right? But at the same time, as I said, you have to kind of see what the user base is today, what the short-term and near-term user base is, and then you can kind of say, well, it's not like a huge deal that Dencun, and I'm going back to the main topic I was actually talking about, it's not a huge deal that Dencun is not coming out, in November. It might be coming in like January, February, right? It really doesn't make any difference in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, that was the original topic that I was talking about. I got a bit sidetracked there. But I mean, if you do enjoy those discussions, feel free to continue the discussion in the Daily Gwei Discord channel about this concept of value. It's just something that's always been interesting to me. And since I've been in crypto, it's obviously been at the front of my mind for a long time now. And there's also a anime that I watched recently that explored this concept in a really weird way. The anime is called Made in Abyss, and this was season 2 of that anime. I don't suggest watching it unless you're into like weird anime, because it really is one of those weird ones. But it explored the concept of value, and I just really liked how they explored it, even though it was weird. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked again. Gonna move on from that one to something that I came across today called the EthResearch bot. So this was introduced today. It's a Twitter account. You can see here they've described it. It's a Twitter bot powered by GPT-4, designed to keep you updated with concise summaries on the newest and most exciting ETH research posts on the Ethereum Research Forum. So if you actually click through to the account here, I've of course followed the account, and I highly recommend you doing so as well. You can see their first kind of summary here. So they give you basically the title, which is in this case zkUniswap, who it's actually by, the author, and explain like I'm 5, and the important takeaway. So this is a really cool bot just for summarizing the multitude of different kind of research posts that get posted to Ethereum Research over time, and doing it in such a way where They've even got Explain Like I'm Fives, where they obviously allow you to share this because you can retweet it on Twitter and like it and share it with your friends, and I can cover it on the Refuel, of course. Easier for me to cover it here, but it's a great use of an AI bot here, so I recommend going and checking it out and actually following the account yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below there. I think this zkUniswap thing is, yeah, I've got it over here, so maybe if I bring this here, this is a good segue into it. So I actually came across this from Diego, who published this on EthResearch. He said, introducing zkUniswap, a first of its kind zkAMM. Now, usually I would go to the EthResearch post or read the tweet thread by the author here and try to understand it myself, but with the kind of like EthResearch bot here, I don't have to do that. I can just look at the tweet from the bot, and there's an Explain Like I'm Five right at the top here. So it explains it by saying, zkUniswap is a research proof of concept that introduces something called a zkAMM, a variant of AMMs that integrate zero-knowledge proofs in protocol. It uses a zk coprocessor to offload the computation of swaps, allowing for cheaper and more efficient execution of swaps off-chain. And then there's a bunch of important takeaways here as well, which is very, very cool to see. I guess my most important takeaway from this, or I guess like my most exciting takeaway from this, is that I think that, as I've said before, there is a lack of innovation within a lot of DeFi right now. I think a lot of the bigger DeFi projects are just coasting along, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But the innovation is happening with the smaller projects, with these more kind of pie in the sky things that may not be totally possible today, but exist as proof of concepts and something that can be introduced in the future. And this concept of like off-chain swaps, it does exist today, obviously. CowSwap is the premier example. Then you've got Uniswap X, and there's a bunch of other ones out there. But this concept of like off-chain swaps is definitely something that I think is going to be the kind of in the spotlight for the next couple of years at least, because it is also a contentious topic, because there are plenty of people out there who really like off-chain swaps. They like the fact that it leads to gasless swaps. It allows you to source liquidity from multiple different places. It allows you to ensure that you don't get failed transactions, stuff like that. But the concerns are around centralization, of course, because the swaps are done off-chain. No one can rug you because you sign what you want to swap for, basically. And there are other incentives in place, especially with CowSwap, for the searchers to actually process your order. But the concern becomes that, and I've seen this concern brought up on Twitter a bunch of times, but let's kind of map this out to what the end game of off-chain swaps would look like. There's a possible future where essentially all of the liquidity providers, the off-chain liquidity providers and market makers, have to abide by some kind of like legislation or regulation that forces them to only process orders that they have KYC'd their participants for. So essentially you end up having KYC liquidity pools, and it kind of defeats the entire purpose of decentralized exchanges to begin with, because decentralized exchanges live or breathe based on the liquidity that they have. And if all the liquidity just moves off-chain into these kind of like centralized market makers, then you don't have very good guarantees around the decentralization of that liquidity. Now, I don't think there's like a particularly high chance of that happening. I feel like that we're going to have a balance between on-chain liquidity and off-chain liquidity, but the off-chain liquidity is very, very juicy, especially for things like layer twos. I've explained this before about how you can have and we do have things where you have off-chain liquidity that allows you to bridge between the different L2s. And the logical end state of that is basically that you can swap from any L2 and stay on any L2 that you want and source liquidity from any other L2 out there. Now, that is a huge boon, a huge positive. But as I said, there are concerns around centralization of liquidity leading to things like KYC and also blacklists and stuff like that. That's where things start getting very kind of murky and stuff and things that I think as a community we need to be aware of. But yeah, it may be far off into the future. It may never happen, but just something to be aware of anyway there. All right, Offchain Labs has posted their first quarterly report for Prysm in quite a while now. So as you guys know, Offchain Labs acquired the Prysmatic Labs team quite a while ago, and Prysmatic Labs is responsible for building and maintaining the Prysm client, while the members of Prysmatic Labs, which is now part of Offchain Labs, are responsible for that. Now, in this quarterly update, you can go read this for yourself. They give us a bunch of different updates on things that have happened in the for the Prysm client here. They've got a TLDR in the Twitter thread, which I'll link in the YouTube description below, but a lot of stuff has happened here. And it's funny because A lot of this stuff is very technical. It's not user facing, but it is really great for people who run the Prysm clients, even if you notice it or not. And some of these things, for example, are, you've got here boosting attestation aggregation time, beacon API improvements, faster hashing of the beacon state, so just making the client more performant. And then they've got a roadmap for the rest of the year. They have some exciting features coming with the Deneb, which is the consensus layer side of the Dencun hard fork, such as deposit contract snapshot, deposit tree, backward syncing, Ethereum protocol research, and more here. Now, so as I said, these are more technical things, definitely not user-facing stuff, but if you're running the Prysm client, they definitely help you and make your client more performant and possibly get you more rewards as well by having better attestation effectiveness and stuff like that. So you can go check out the full quarterly report for yourself. I'll link this in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, now speaking of Ethereum validators, one thing I wanted to go over today is that the validator entry queue, the queue that was at like 90,000 at one point, a few months ago, is now down to just 7,100. And according to the whenmerge.com website, if you scroll down here, this queue will be cleared in 2 days and 15 hours. So yeah, pretty, I guess, like fun journey to get here. The validator queue has basically been empty the entire time, but that entry queue has been full for quite a while now. But I've explained before how I think that that was a one-off thing where we'd see the entry queue go up to like 90,000. For a bunch of various different reasons. Actually, I can kind of like repeat those reasons. I've got them up on my screen here. If you just give me 1 sec, I'll find it for you. Where is it? Here. Yeah, so those reasons were, post withdrawals, we had the mass reshuffling of stake. For example, Kraken retail users got force exited and had to re-enter if they wanted to continue staking their ETH. We had an influx of ETH into staking that was waiting for the de-risking event of withdrawals. Lots of attention on ETH staking because of that upgrade that went live. And then Rocket Pool's LEB8 upgrade went live as well, which resulted in more validators obviously being added to the queue as people converted from 16 to 8 mini pools there. So that was a one-off event in my eyes. We're not going to enable withdrawals again, right? We're not going to have a massive de-risking event like that again. The things that may happen again, maybe for some reason Coinbase caves and shuts down their staking product and has to force exit users. But even that wouldn't put us back to where we were because it would have to be combined with all these other things happening. Now, typically the counter argument to this is people saying to me, well, what if we get, the bull market happens again and yields skyrocket because the on-chain activity goes nuts and MEV goes nuts again and validators are earning 10% plus yield. Okay, sure, there'll be an influx of validators, but I still don't see us getting to that massive kind of like 90,000 entry queue again. And if we do, I'm happy to say that I was wrong, but yeah, I don't know. I kind of on the fence about that. I'm leaning towards not seeing that again. But regardless of that, as I said, the entry queue is going to be empty in 2 days and 15 hours, which means if you have been waiting to potentially shuffle your stake around, maybe you were with an exchange or Lido or something like that, and you want to spin up a Rocket Pool mini pool or you want to spin up a solo validator, you can do it now and you only have to wait less than 3 days. I mean, you don't even have to wait until this happens. But I've also got friends who have been waiting for this and they're pretty big ETH stakers. They've been waiting for the queue to go down for them to rotate out of their ST ETH. So as I've explained to you guys before, if you're a big staker and you're earning a lot of money, the opportunity cost of waiting like 2 months is huge, right? Because you lose out on 2 months worth of gain. So essentially what these people did was that they had their ETH and ST ETH, where they were obviously still earning rewards, and they're converting those to solo validators now that the queue is basically less than 3 days because the opportunity cost is much lower now. It's less than 3 days rather than whatever it was, upwards of 2 months there. So yeah, I just wanted to give you guys an update on that there. I also had the Raider.network website up here just to prompt me to remind you guys that there's a lot of discussions happening right now about kind of like Lido and LSTs and stuff like that on Twitter. I just wanted to quickly remind you that I'm going to be talking about all of this with Eric. So that podcast or the next Daily Gwei drive-through with Eric will be live tomorrow. We didn't record it today, but we've rescheduled to tomorrow, and it'll still be out the normal time that like the Saturday morning US time that I said to you guys yesterday. I don't know exactly what we're going to touch on because we never really have like an agenda going into it. We really just kind of speak about what comes to mind. But I think the main points we're going to touch on is about whether we should enshrine an LST or not enshrine an LST, and what the actual concern around Lido is. Because I see tons of people always talking about Lido being a concern, but not many people actually talking about what actual concerns there are. Like, what is the actual attack vector here? What could Lido actually do to damage the network? So we're going to actually run through those as well as the enshrined LST stuff. So be sure to tune into that episode. As I said, we'll go live tomorrow there. Now, moving on from this to another update from Nethermind. So the Nethermind client is now synced with the base mainnet and Optimism mainnet. So very cool to see this. We're getting, I guess, like client diversity at layer 2s, as I've talked about before, with Nethermind jumping into the fray here. I think I mentioned this last time on October 3rd, maybe a few days ago, when they actually teased this out. But yeah, if you want to run the Nethermind client and sync with base mainnet and Optimism mainnet, you now can. And I'll link that in the YouTube description below for you to check out there. All right, Taiko has a really great tweet thread out today called Based Rollup FAQ. So basically, if you want to know all about what a based rollup is, then this is the thread for you. And this was something that I think I brought up quite a while ago because Justin Drake did an Ethereum Research post about this. But the TLDR on this, without going into too much detail, is essentially that the rollup would be rollup's transaction ordering would be controlled by the kind of like settlement layer itself. So by Ethereum layer 1 itself, instead of the sequencer that exists as a separate client at layer 2, right? So that's like the very high level gist of it, but there's more that goes into it, especially when you start talking about MEV and data availability and stuff like that. So Taiko goes through this in this FAQ, which is really great. Honestly, I highly recommend checking this out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But this is also falls into the discussion of enshrinement and what I was talking about the other day about how there's this kind of discussion about what to enshrine in the core protocol and what not to enshrine. The concept of an enshrined rollup is similar to a based rollup, except that you would put a zkEVM, for example, directly into Ethereum layer 1, and it would basically completely be controlled by Ethereum layer 1. There'd be no way to do sequencing outside of Ethereum layer 1 consensus, and there'd be no way to do data availability outside of Ethereum layer 1, from my understanding of that. So for all intents and purposes, it would be the same thing as Ethereum layer 1 because it would be part of the core protocol, but that's probably pretty far out. Don't know if that's even going to happen. It just depends. But yeah, if you want to learn more about based rollups, this tweet thread is definitely for you. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to check out. All right, an interesting tweet from Benji here today, who works at Optimism Lab. So he just gave us a update on what the past 5 months of Optimism has looked like. So the Optimism ecosystem has been very, very busy. So you can see here that the fault or fraud-proof alpha has been worked on, and obviously that's live on testnet, as I talked about yesterday. They introduced the law of chains, which was the kind of governance for the superchain ecosystem, and they launched the superchains. They began the retroactive public goods funding number 3, which is still ongoing. Gave away grants. Bedrock launched, of course. It may seem like an eternity ago, but it did happen in the last 5 months. And then there's more in the a Twitter thread here, such as new clients, research, expansions, NFTs, so much going on. I mean, this is crazy. And, the reason why I bring this tweet up is because there was a little bit of a discussion I had with someone in the Daily Gwei Discord channel. If you go to the Other Chains channel, I had a discussion with RVD here about how Ethereum Layer 1... He kind of was talking about how Ethereum layer 1 is not moving very fast compared to, I guess, like other layer 1s, like Solana, for example. And then I got into this conversation with him where I basically said, well, the whole point of Ethereum layer 1 is not to move fast, right? Ethereum layer 1 is not being built for end users anymore. It is being built for layer 2s. And where we move fast is at layer 2. And that's exactly what's happening here. You can see past 5 months what just Optimism alone has done, right? This is not including all the other L2s out there, of which there are many. They can move fast, right? But Ethereum layer 1, it is a feature for it not to move fast, and it is also part of its design for it to only service L2s and to service its own, obviously, security, resiliency, and reliability. Ethereum layer 1 is not meant to be an execution layer, as I've said before. It's not meant to be compared to monolithic layer 1s. Monolithic layer 1s are very similar to L2s in that they're trying to be execution environments, but also, the monolithic L1s are trying to be everything, the settlement layer and stuff like that. Whereas Ethereum L1 is just trying to be a really strong settlement and data availability layer, right? So from that perspective, I just never kind of like, I thought it was as an apples to apples comparison between Ethereum as it exists today and other layer ones. Now, of course, people will say, well, you can do execution on Ethereum layer one, and it's been that way since Genesis. I'm like, yes, it has, but that is, to me, at this point in time, technical debt. And the reason why I say it's technical debt is because Ethereum has gone through so many different phases in its kind of roadmap, in its kind of design. It was a pioneer and still is a pioneer in so many different things. But if Ethereum was built today, as with all the knowledge that we have of all the last kind of like years since Ethereum launched, it would be built as a completely different thing to what it is today. I'm pretty convinced that it would be built just as a settlement / data availability layer, and it wouldn't allow execution on layer one because it would just have all the execution happening at layer two. But because it didn't exist like that, because it's technically, in my mind, technical debt, it's going to be there for quite a while, which is not a bad thing, mind you. But in saying that, that kind of like bolsters my point around how Ethereum layer one is not optimizing for execution. It is optimizing for settlement and data availability for layer twos. Layer twos are optimizing for execution, and they're doing that in a really big way. But it goes beyond execution as well. Layer twos can also be settlement layers. Like you can build layer threes on top of layer twos. They're obviously not going to be as strong as a settlement layer as Ethereum layer one, and they obviously do ultimately settle down to Ethereum layer one. But there is that kind of connection there. And on top of that, layer twos can do so much more than what Ethereum layer one can do beyond just execution, beyond just building execution environments to lower fees. They can do things like what Arbitrum's doing with Stylus, right? Allow you to program smart contracts in things other than Solidity, in WebAssembly, not just EVM, right? They can do fully private L2s like what Aztec is doing. I mean, I'm just repeating myself here because I say this all the time on the Refuel, but really when you look at it, that's the comparison that you should do. Layer twos are the execution environments. They should be compared to the monolithic L1s out there that are also optimizing for execution environments. Ethereum L1, really, the only comparison that I can really see, to be honest, would be maybe Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is a settlement layer, but it's not a very good one. It can't really settle much. It basically settles BTC transactions and some kind of weird things with like ordinals and some BRC20 token stuff they have going on, but it's very hacky and not very good. It's definitely not like what it is with Ethereum. But in terms of Ethereum with other layer ones out there, and in terms of like real competition for being a settlement layer for like the modular kind of design that Ethereum has, I'm not really seeing any others out there that are following in that path. So yeah, just figured that was worth bringing up there. But you can go check out Benji's tweet thread. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so there. But yeah, I think that's going to be it for today. But just the last couple of minutes, actually, just something that came to mind just before that I figured I'd talk about since I've got some time here. The market stuff, it's kind of like funny watching the fact that I don't even see crypto Twitter talking much about the markets anymore. And honestly, my crypto Twitter is a mess these days. Really, today I went on there and it was just like Lido debates and bad takes, to be honest. And I kind of tweeted out saying that if there's one thing that's going to make me quit Twitter, it's probably like Lido debates, but it probably goes beyond that. It extends to the fact that the amount of just stupid stuff that I see said on Twitter after so many years, I mean, it's always been like this, but after so many years, it just burns me out. But it's funny to see that the market talk isn't really something that's being talked about. And I kind of draw a comparison to 2019 where, or even I guess like into early 2020, where a lot of the discussions were like this. There was a lot of drama. There was a lot of kind of like contention on crypto Twitter. There was a lot of debates that really went nowhere, and crypto Twitter is the worst place to debate anything. And the market was just quiet during that whole time. I think funny enough, the cure for these debates, at least to distract people from having these debates on Twitter, is for the market to go up, because then the market talk just drowns out these debates. Because as I said, I don't think crypto Twitter is a good place to have these debates. It is probably the worst place to have these debates, because crypto Twitter is what I like to call a peanut gallery. It is just a spectacle, guys. Like, no one cares about accuracy. People only care about having their own biases confirmed. They want to ratio each other. They want their team to win. Really, at the end of the day, I think crypto Twitter is an arena. The people on crypto Twitter are the spectators of that arena, and there's always some kind of main characters every day or every week that are fighting in that arena, having these spectators watch on. And at the end of the day, the spectators just want to be entertained. Accurate information be damned. So I think that's worth keeping in mind. But you watch how that all gets drowned out as soon as the market starts going up only again, right? It's always funny how that kind of plays out there. But anyway, on that note, that's going to be it for today. So thank you everyone for listening, and and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all next week. Thanks, everyone.